Ty Simpson just maintained this positivity and this quality leadership and this resolve that I feel like his team eventually, he got him on board. Texas Tech has not played anyone even close to as talented as Oregon. Oregon's one of the most talented rosters in the entire country. Notre Dame and Vanderbilt and Texas and BYU were just sitting at home watching Tulane and JMU play in games in which they were overmatched. That's not cool.
Touchdown. These fans are the best in the country. A day like today is why we love college football.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into the Joel Klatt Show. I'm Joel Klatt. This show is brought to you by Graduate by Hilton. We thank them for their support, as always. Lots to get into here as we react to the first round of the college football playoff. But before we do that, just remember to subscribe to the show over on YouTube. That would be awesome. You can hit the notification button, get down into the comments below. I'll try to jump in there over the course of the next couple of weeks as we've got holidays coming up. But yeah, we'll see. And then wherever you're listening, if you listen to this as an audio product, if you could rate and review us wherever you're listening, whether it's Spotify, iTunes, any of those, please go do that. In particular, if you're out there on Spotify, they do an amazing job for us. So thank you for that. And then wherever you like to social media, we're out there in all of the short form content at Joel Klatt Show. You can follow us wherever you like to social media. Let's jump into this because we get to react to these first round games. And listen, a couple of these games were phenomenal. They really were. Friday night, the Alabama-Oklahoma game was fantastic. Saturday morning, the noon game, Miami and A&M, that was a fantastic game. Now, both of these games had some sloppiness to them, there's no doubt, but there was certainly the suspense and kind of the greatness that we'd expect out of a playoff matchup. These teams were evenly matched in these cases, and they were great games to watch. Not so much the case for the back half of the first round of the playoffs, the last two games, but more on that in a little bit. Let's start on Friday night, shall we? Because that was, I thought it was the best game of the weekend. Bama comes back from 17 down, and they beat Oklahoma on the road. And remember, all week, and even in these preview episodes, we talked a lot about the home field advantage and how last year every home team, won by double digits in the first round, and how it was such an advantage. And I honestly thought, boy, it might be a while until we see a home team lose a first round game, just because we don't generally see really good college football teams lose on their home field, much less when you've got the environment of like a playoff atmosphere right there for you. And lo and behold, both Oklahoma and Texas A&M end up losing at home in the first round, and Alabama goes in there and takes down the Sooners. That was, I got to be honest, that was an incredible comeback. The ability to stare adversity right in the face in those first really quarter and a half, more than quarter and a half, really, all the way until about the 4-minute mark of that first half, stare adversity right in the face and keep on playing hard. And then it pays off with that sequence late in the first half. That was really tremendous resolve from Alabama. And let me start right there, because there was one guy, at least watching on TV, not being there, and I'm sure that there were more guys on the sideline, and I don't want to boil this down to one player, and you guys know that I tend to be quarterback-centric, but that's where the cameras were going on Friday night. And I thought Chris and Herbie did a nice job of talking about Ty Simpson and his leadership ability, but it was apparent to me during the course of the early moments of that game, the early drives of that game, that when it wasn't going well for Alabama, it didn't seem to matter to Ty Simpson. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying that in a good way. He continued and he maintained a positive attitude and leadership on the sideline. It didn't matter what was going on. It didn't matter that they were down 17. He continued to go up to every part of the offense or even the entire team on the sideline and be like, all right, here we go. Like, let's go. It felt very like Tom Brady-esque in that. Now, again, I hate comparing people to Tom Brady, but you got that sense from Brady. You'd be like, hey, one play at a time. Let's just go put a drive together. Let's do something positive right here that can trend forward for the rest of the game. And it felt like Ty Simpson was doing that. I was very impressed with him when they were down 17-0 because nothing was going right for the Crimson Tide. Nothing. You know, Kalen DeBoer's going crazy because he felt like the officials weren't making some of the calls, and there definitely should have been a couple of defensive pass interferences called against Oklahoma, but they weren't. And the officiating was similar on both sides. But he's going crazy, and yet Ty Simpson just maintained this positivity and this quality leadership and this resolve that I feel like his team eventually, he got him on board. And I just wanted to call that out before we start talking about this massive swing late in the second quarter, because I do believe that played a huge part in the way that his team believed in the way that they could come back. They go down, they finally gets a third down completion. They get the 4th and 2 and into the end zone. And now all of a sudden it's 17-7. And it's like, okay, 17-7 is not terrible. There's 4.5 minutes left in this second quarter. Alabama's going to receive the ball to start the second half. So you're like, okay, let's survive these last 4 minutes. Maybe we can even get a score out of this. Okay, so OU goes back on the field and they start to drive. It's 4.5 minutes left. It's the second quarter and it's third down. And John Mateer escapes a sack, very similar to what he's done all year long because Mateer has been Houdini at times, trying to get away from pressure. And he escapes a sack and he's on the run. And all of us, I'm sure, because I was thinking this at home, are thinking to myself, oh, he can run for the first down. And then he rears back and throws it. And I'm like, oh, he better have someone wide open. He did. And it's a drop. Boom. So it goes from a sure conversion with Mateer's feet to a potential big play down the field for Oklahoma to a drop. Now it's fourth down. And guess who trots onto the field? It's the punter. And what in the world was that? I don't understand that. I don't understand it at all. The punter looked like he just walked up and softly laid the ball down on the grass. I'm sorry to laugh. I'm sure Oklahoma fans are going to throw up in their mouths when they hear this. What was the punter doing? The kicking game in general in college football is a bit of a mess. We saw that in every one of these games, specifically that A&M Miami game, but also in this game. Sandell wins the Grozer Award, all of a sudden can't hit a field goal. Like, what are we doing with the kicking game? This is why, folks, this is why football players have a hard time with kickers, because the kickers just stand over by themselves in practice. You know, they got the snappers and you got the punter and you got the kicker, and they just kind of stand over there and they're never that sweaty. And it's like, are they kicking? What are they doing? Then you see them like snap it a couple of times, and then they practice their little steps. And then the punter walks out there and lays the football down on the field. I don't know how else to describe it. If I was in the booth, I felt bad for Fowler and Herbie, because I'm like, how do you explain that? I have no words to explain what we just saw with the punter laying the football down on the ground. And sure enough, boom, field goal Alabama. Now it's different. It's a 10-point game. Alabama's going to get the ball to start the second half, and you can feel the entire momentum of that game change because the punter decided to softly lay the football down on the grass. I don't get it. So now we get into panic mode. This is where the game totally turns, and this is where it turns for the two quarterbacks. So Mateer's decision on third down with 4.5 minutes to go, because up until that point, he had played pretty well. Granted, it's Mateer's style. His footwork is never great. The inaccuracies are there, and this or that. But he's making plays. They're throwing the ball over the middle. He's running the football. It's good. It's good. This is the best Oklahoma's offense has looked really in the back half of the season when you really boil it down. So they've got something going. But then that third down happens. He could have run for it. Tries to throw it down the field. It's a drop. Now he comes back on the field after the punter turns it over, and Bama gets a field goal. And now all hell breaks loose because I have no idea what John Mateer was looking at. Now, he says after the game that he was confused by the coverage that Alabama ran, but he throws it right to the defender. I mean, right to the defender. And listen, like, I get it, because things go fast, and Bama was running that coverage where they've got everyone up at the line of scrimmage, And then they were dropping people out and they're rotating people, and it's hard to see. And like, I listen, I understand that. Certainly more understandable than laying the football down on the field from the punter. But an egregious interception that goes for 6. And now we got a tie football game. And so I keep coming back to that third down, and I just wonder to myself, like, how much did that shake up the confidence of John Mateer? Not running for it, throwing it down the field. He gets the drop, and when he comes back on the field, he throws a pick 6, and it was an egregious pick 6. It just was. There wasn't a wide receiver for Oklahoma in the vicinity. In fact, if it's not picked off, it might have been intentional grounding from the pocket. And entire game is different from that point on. Entire game is different from that. So from 17-0, Bama ends up basically beating them 34-7 the rest of the game and handling them, totally handling them. I thought Bama's defense did a nice job creating pressure on John Mateer. And then you had the differences in the two quarterbacks. And I thought that the two quarterbacks were vastly different. Ty Simpson played a really solid game, and he played controlled and he played within himself. He threw some dimes down the field. He can spin it now. He makes big boy throws down the football field. One of those touchdown passes over the left corner. That was a beautiful ball. Beautiful ball. Part of it is that he plays on time. And the reason that he plays on time is that he's on schedule with his feet. I think Ty Simpson has beautiful footwork in the pocket. It's part of what makes him such a good player. And he is a good player. He's absolutely the reason that this team is moving on, because they couldn't run the football. Now, neither could Oklahoma. But the difference in the two quarterbacks and the way that they played was, I think, pretty vast. Pretty vast. John Mateer did not play well. And you can't win a playoff game and a matchup game if your quarterback doesn't play well. Meanwhile, Ty Simpson did play well. And then you get to just kind of the overall nature of this Oklahoma team. And listen, Oklahoma had a fabulous year. They really did. Because their schedule was difficult coming into the year. A lot of us, and even me, like, I was wrong about Oklahoma. I thought that they would be 8-4 at best. They go 10-2. Now, some teams late in that schedule were dealing with some unforeseen circumstances, like LSU having to fire their coach. Missouri ends up losing their quarterback. So there was things that we couldn't see at the beginning of the year. But that being said, they go 10-2. They had a fabulous year. The problem is that in this game, it became, I felt like, somewhat exposed that, on both sides of the ball, but more specifically on the offensive side of the football, when you can't run it and you don't have balance, then all you have is creative play calls. And that it felt like that's all they had. It was either a really nondescript basic run that went for no gain, or they're trying to orchestrate some sort of odd motion and gain leverage and gain a hat in order to create a big play. And that's no way to sustain offense. Oklahoma's a very talented team, but I don't think foundationally they're built right, in particular on the offensive side, to win a matchup game. That doesn't mean that they can't win a matchup game. Obviously, they're a few mistakes away from being right there. They gave up basically 10 points for free and lose by 10. So that's not to say that they're, not close, because they are. They are. But they don't do the foundational things well. They don't build into success offensively well enough to sustain and win a matchup game. And John Mateer has got to get better with his footwork. That also crept up in the A&M game with Marcel Reed. More on that in a little bit. The key to good quarterback play is to play on time. The key to playing on time is to have good footwork, and he did not have that. They made egregious errors in this game as a team, and you got to credit Kalen DeBoer, because there's a lot of noise surrounding Kalen DeBoer and the way that Alabama played against Georgia, and they could have been distracted, but they weren't. And Ty Simpson actually addressed that in the post-game press conference when he was asked about the media and what they were talking about after the SEC championship game. Here he was.
Coach Grubb just said he feels like what happened in the SEC championship game helped y'all come back tonight, and he kind of saw a different resolve in the team tonight. Do you feel the same way that what happened in the last time out kind of helped tonight?
Ty, you start with that.
Yeah, I guess we can thank you guys for that. I mean, y'all kind of wrote us off, in a sort of way, so appreciate that.
I love that. I love that. And there, right there, you see that leadership quality. You can tell why everyone in that locker room and certainly on that sideline follows Ty Simpson. So now Bama's going to meet Indiana in the Rose Bowl. That should be a great game. I don't think it changes much about the way that I feel about Alabama. I knew that they were an elite passing team, which they are. I know that they struggle running the football, which they did. And I think that their defense is good. I don't know if it's a great defense, but I do think it's a good defense. They were able to completely stymie Oklahoma, which had a real hard time offensively, really in the back half of the season, but certainly after that 17-0 lead. So now they're going to face what is right now the number one team in the country. And I think what's fascinating is I started thinking to myself, like, well, Bama's going to get the full attention of the Hoosiers. And then just saying that out loud just sounds weird. I mean, we are talking about Alabama. We're talking about Indiana, and Indiana is going to be the favorite in this game. They just are. They're the more balanced team. I don't know if they're the more talented team, but they certainly have been the more balanced team. And we'll see if that is able to translate in that Rose Bowl. That should be a really good one. I'll be there, and I can't wait to watch that one. What's up, Klatt Show fans? If you're looking for a great gift idea or something fun to do with your friends and family, look no further than SeatGeek. With over 35 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app out there. Now, there are more than 70,000 events listed, like concerts, festivals. You can even score college football playoff tickets, World Cup tickets this summer. They're on SeatGeek. I personally love using SeatGeek for tickets to games with my boys because I know that SeatGeek has my back. Each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. Look for the green dots. It means a great deal. Red ones maybe mean keep looking. Now, they're backed by their buyer guarantee, and of course, they have a code just for us at the Klatt Show. You can use Klatt10 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with promo code Klatt10. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. A huge thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring today's show. Miami and Texas A&M. Let's go to that one down in College Station. Sloppy game. The wind was obviously a factor. The kicking game was terrible all the way around. But what do you need to do in a matchup game, in particular if you play on the road, when the conditions aren't great for points and you start getting into a low-scoring affair? What do you have to do? 2 things. You've got to do 2 things in order to win. You have to hold on to the football, and you have to win the line of scrimmage. Check, Miami Hurricanes. That was phenomenal from them, in particular up front, because they won the line of scrimmage with their offensive line and defensive line. They were able to put pressure on Marcel Reed when they needed to. That defensive line was fantastic. Bain was a monster. Mesidor was great. Their entire defense was sensational. That Miami defense has been good all year long, and they were certainly great on Saturday when they needed to be great in the playoff on the road. Offensively, that was a matchup that we questioned here, and we talked about the fact that the run game for Miami had been a bit hot and cold this year. There had been games when it was well below 3.5 yards per carry, and there were games that it was well above 3.5 yards per carry. And in this one, they ran it really well. And that was a matchup that we didn't know how it would go for Miami, in particular, because we know that the pass rush for A&M is legit. And Miami clearly comes into this game, and they wanted to make this a line of scrimmage game and not a pocket game. Okay, and those are 2 different things. They didn't want to put this game on Carson Beck, not because it was Carson Beck, but because they felt like they could control the line of scrimmage, and they did that. Mark Fletcher, 172 yards on the ground. And they stayed patient, and they stayed consistent, and they were able to run the ball well and get some big runs late in the game. That was really awesome. Like, that offensive line was terrific, and that is the nature and the identity of their head coach. And so many times we talk about the team taking on the nature of their head coach, and this Miami team certainly seems to have taken on the nature of their head coach, and Mario Cristobal, an O-line guy, right? And so getting it done up there has to feel good for him. Now, what I thought was also interesting in this game is that I felt like the better quarterback won the game, and yet Marcel Reed's numbers outside of the 2 interceptions would suggest that he played better than Carson Beck, because Beck's numbers weren't great. They really weren't. And yet, Beck played winning football, and Reed didn't. And that's really the bottom line. And coming into this game, one of the big themes and questions that we even talked about at length in the preview episode was about the quarterbacks and which one would just play clean. Not better, but clean. And I was very specific with that language. And that's exactly what happened. Now, I picked the wrong team. I thought Beck was going to be the one that made mistakes on the road against Cassius Howell in that pass rush, and that never materialized. Beck played really solid and clean. And that's what his team needed because they were able to win the line of scrimmage. Meanwhile, Marcel Reed did not. So he made some plays, yes, but 3 big turnovers, the fumble in what you could argue was close to field goal range. He throws an interception and he throws a second interception late when they have a chance to win, really tie the game or win with a 2-point conversion. You know, like Reed's inability to throw on time and to play on time was similar to Mateer. And here's the thing is these guys have a lot of talent. So there are plenty of games when they walk out there and you just see the talent and you're enamored with the talent. And what happens is that you overlook the small detail errors. And quarterback is all about the small, minute details. Let me explain. For instance, on the last interception, Marcel Reed throws for Texas A&M. He's got what is kind of a clear out route over to his left, and then he's got what I would call kind of an angle 8. It's an angle and then an 8 route, or you could call it a Texas. You could call it a bang 8. You can call it whatever you want. I don't know what they call it, but systems all over the country are going to call it different things. The key to throwing that ball for a touchdown is to be on time. You cannot throw that ball late. You cannot, because it is going to be quickly open and the window is going to be small. And so there is a specific timing that you have to play with your feet in order to get the ball there on time and on target. And generally speaking, if you're going to throw a bang 8 or an angle 8 or a Texas route from like a nasty split in the red zone inside the 10-yard line, everything gets reduced. So you're not crossing over your feet. You're shuffling back, and you've got to throw on firm. It's kind of like a shuffle firm ball. That's the timing, because the timing is of the entire offense is kept in the quarterback's feet. And if you go shuffle, hitch step, then throw, you're late. And he hitch stepped. He shuffles back, he backpedals back, then he hitches up and he throws the ball and he's a full step late and it's picked off because the defensive back can recover. You're making a very specific cut on the angle 8 right there, and the ball has to be out on the break, and it needs to be thrown on the money and driven on the frame of the wide receiver on time. Shuffle back, firm ball, bang. And there it is. And if you don't coach it that way, then you're going to be late. And if it's not executed that way, then you're going to be late. And it's going to be incomplete or intercepted. So a lack of detail got Texas A&M beat today. He didn't make the wrong read. It was the correct read. He just didn't execute it. Execution lies within the details. John Mateer, same thing. He's hopping all over the pocket, shuffling back and forth, which you never should do in the pocket, jumping to throw drive routes. We saw Reed do that. These guys are not being coached well with their footwork. Meanwhile, you watch Ty Simpson. This guy is a machine in the pocket. Bang. He knows where he's kicking. He knows where he's stepping. He knows that if he takes a hitch step, he's to number 2. If he takes a second hitch step, he's to number 3 in the progression. All of that shouldn't mean anything to all of you at home other than his feet take him to the throw. They do, because he's coached well. He plays with detail. Beck, similarly, the way he was able to protect the football and play clean is he played within the details of the offense. Doesn't mean that you have to be great all the time. And in fact, if you chase greatness and you get outside of the detail of the offense, guess what you're going to do? Turn the ball over. And Mateer turned it over and Reed turned it over, and their teams lost because of that. Because of that. I see a rash, unfortunately, of really poorly coached quarterbacks in college football. It's just the truth. It's just the truth. And now you see that come to fruition when you get matchup games and you see evenly matched teams and one guy plays clean and one guy doesn't. And you're like, oh, that's just detail. Detail is coaching, because as a coach, you're watching film, and what you see on that film, you're either coaching or you're allowing. Take for that what you want. Beck played better than Reed, and now Miami moves forward and they get Ohio State. Now, I don't think that my opinion of Miami changed much in this game against Texas A&M, but now they're going to go down to Dallas and face Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl, and now Ohio State avoids having to play Texas A&M in Dallas in what would have inevitably been a home crowd. So Ohio State's got to feel decent about this, even though now they're going to have to deal with that defensive line. And we'll see how they do that, because they did not handle Indiana's defensive line very well in the Big Ten championship game. And that is an active, athletic defensive line that throws a lot of simulated pressures at you. And I'm sure that Miami is going to run a very similar game plan. And that O-line for Ohio State is going to have their hands totally full. And Julian Sayin is going to have to play a really clean game if Ohio State wants to beat Miami. So Miami wins at 10-3, and they go on to the Cotton Bowl. Ole Miss and Oregon, they rout their G5 opponents, Tulane and JMU. And we got kind of what we expected in those games. You know, it's a bit of a frustration in general, I guess, like in college football, that we allow this to continue, this structure that we know is not great, but we continue to just kind of go along with it. You know, these two teams, Ole Miss and Oregon, are very good football teams. We got kind of what we expected out of Oregon. We got what we expected out of Ole Miss. I think for Ole Miss, though, there is a challenge now moving forward. You see, I told you that I thought that the emotion of losing Lane Kiffin and going through that was going to galvanize them, and they would circle the wagons and they would play really well, and the crowd would be great. And that's exactly what happened. Now the challenging part is what they do from here. Because now it's like, okay, like we did that against Tulane. It's like, okay, now we got Georgia. And the rubber meets the road. And this is not going to be the same team without Lane calling plays. And they weren't against Tulane. I know they scored 41 points, but I'm just telling you, Lane Kiffin is a different play caller. He's one of the best play callers I've ever covered. When I watch the film of Lane Kiffin calling plays, multiple times per game, he lines up in a formation and you just automatically are like, oh, he's got him. He is a chess master and he calls a great game. Okay? Someone clip that off and send it to him. I know he listens to all of my stuff. He texts me all the time. Lane, love you, man. But I also talk good about you sometimes. Don't just send me the bad clips when I'm telling you, the other type of stuff. So Lane's great in the play calling. This will be a challenge for them moving forward to face Georgia. All right. Georgia will be ready for what they saw this offense become against Tulane. That's going to set up what I think is a difficult manifestation for this Ole Miss team. They scored a TD on their first 5 games, or actually 5 drives of that game, and then they kind of ran out of gas. But listen, like, it's a good team. I don't think that they're going to beat Georgia again. I think what you see in that game is going to be a little bit of all the emotion being let out from what has clearly been an emotional time frame. Okay. Now Oregon. Oregon rolled out there against JMU, and I think that they kind of reminded us what they could potentially be. You look at their first 5 drives. 4 plays, 68, touchdown. 5 plays, 75, touchdown. 3 plays, 78 yards, touchdown. 4 plays, 63 yards, touchdown. 5 plays, 80 yards, touchdown. Listen, it's been quiet in Eugene, Oregon, and I made that point last week. And, like, this is a team that got bit last year. They were undefeated and lost 1 game to the eventual national champion in the Rose Bowl. And what was that, 41-21, I think that game was? And, like, then they lose one game this year, and that's to the undefeated number 1 seed Indiana Hoosiers. It's like that's their only 2 losses in the last 2 years. And that is a ridiculously talented team. If you watch the first 5 drives of that game, it's like, whoa. James Madison and Oregon are light years apart. Light years apart. And I just think watch out for Oregon. That's going to be a phenomenal game with Texas Tech. And Texas Tech has not played anyone even close to as talented as Oregon this year. So I think that the Red Raiders are going to be in for, at least early in that game, a bit of a rude awakening. They haven't seen anybody like Oregon's one of the most talented rosters in the entire country. They have 80 plus 4-star players, another handful of 5-star players. You know, they're in the 90 plus players that are 4 or 5 stars. Their blue chip ratio is incredible. And Texas Tech has not seen that. Best teams they've faced this year are like Utah and BYU twice. Not to diminish those teams, but it's not the roster that Oregon has. So the speed on the field is going to be different for Texas Tech. We'll see how that, manifests itself in that quarterfinal matchup, but that's going to be a phenomenal game. And I would just tell you, I felt like Oregon would come out and play well. And then when they did that, I was like, yep, Dan Lanning, he's got something going on there. I feel like that is a team. Of all the teams that won this weekend, that's the one that I would keep my eye on and just think to yourself, like, they could make a little bit of a run. Remember, it was Ohio State that played in the first round at home against Tennessee, went on a run and ended up winning the national title. If there's a team that does that this year, it would be the Oregon Ducks. We'll see if they can. Saturday was a tough day for the group of 5. It was a tough day for the creators of this playoff. It was a tough day for the leaders of college football, because all of us sit there and you're like, how do you continue to screw up what is so obviously, like an easy fix? I think that this playoff is not built right. You guys know that. I got in all sorts of hot water this week when I said, hey, in college football, we don't want Cinderellas. And I'm right. Did you watch the last 2 games of the first round? Of course I'm right. Notre Dame and Vanderbilt and Texas and BYU were just sitting at home watching Tulane and JMU play in games in which they were overmatched. That's not cool. That's not like, oh, yay, look at us. Look at the access we're giving. They don't need our charity. They don't need our pity. JMU and Tulane, unfortunately, are now going to be thought of as oh, yeah, they were just those teams that got out there, thrown out there in the college football playoff. And it's not their fault. It's the fault of the people that built this structure. Obviously. You see, JMU is a good football team for what they are, competing in the Sun Belt, competing for a championship in the Sun Belt, which they won. Same for Tulane, to compete in the American, which they won. But that doesn't mean that they can go and beat Ole Miss on the road and beat Oregon on the road. It doesn't mean that any group of 5 team. So it's better for them if they can go and play their own playoff. Maybe we can make even a little bit more revenue. Incentivize them, subsidize it, give them the same money that they would have gotten in the college football playoff and earmark that money towards putting on a national championship. And then guess what? You've got more inventory that television networks would buy. What are we doing? What are we doing? They deserve that. They deserve to go play in awesome close games and semifinals and championships, not to go up to Oregon and get their doors blown off. And listen, credit to them, because they kept playing hard and they scored a few times there and played pretty well in the second half. And that's awesome. Guess why? Because that's a proud and good football team for what they are. The group of 5 and the Power 4 are growing vastly apart. This is not the old days where Boise State was like, oh, they could go and beat anybody on any given day. That's not what we have anymore. Since the transfer portal opened, what we have is the haves and the have-nots. And guess what? Those schools and that level of football is being rated every single time the transfer portal opens. Those big programs from around the country, they go down there, and every single all-conference player in the Sun Belt and in the MAC and in the American and in the Mountain West, those Power 4 programs go and comb over that tape. And if you can play, they offer you, and they try to go down there and get you. That might be tampering, but that's what goes on. That's the truth. And so the gap between the Group of 5 and the Power 4 is large. It's never been larger, and it will only grow larger. How do we not understand that? And guess what? They're doing that with the coaches as well. Look at all these guys that brought their teams to the playoff. They're all going to the Power 4. So how do we fix this? Well, my solution, one, go play your own playoff, which could be awesome, and it could be awesome for them. And if that's not what the solution is, then we need a prerequisite in order to get into the college football playoff. Just like the Olympics. Did you know that you've got to run an Olympic time before you can then be in the trials and qualify through your country to go and be in the Olympic Games, like in track and field? Well, there's like a prerequisite for a time. Like there's a minimum time that you have to run your, the 400 in. Let's just say it's the 400. And there's a minimum 400 time. And once you hit the Olympic qualifying time prerequisite, then you can go into the trials in your country and win your trials and then go and compete in the Olympic Games. Well, we need this in college football, obviously. We had the 20th ranked team and the 24th ranked team or 23rd ranked team in the country in the college football playoff. If you want to keep access for the Group of 5 into this playoff, then just say, if you win your championship and you're in the top 15, then you can go play in the college football playoff. But until then you just get what we got to this weekend. And I didn't think that was fair for Tulane, and I didn't think that was fair for JMU. And the problem in college football is and always has been that we are unwilling to have difficult conversations in college football. Unwilling. We're unwilling to do so. It's been a good old boys network for a long time, and those that have power, they don't want to use it in a way that would demean or hurt other people within the sport. And maybe that's noble. That might be noble. But what I do know is that we don't have difficult conversations in this sport. We don't have difficult conversations around bowl games and where they're scheduled and when they're scheduled. And because of that, they get incorporated into the college football playoffs. So we don't have home field advantage in the quarterfinals for the best teams in the country. And the calendar gets screwed up because we've got to play our semifinals and national championship all the way into January, not until January 19th or 20th. Okay, so the fact that we don't have a hard conversation about bowl games and where they fit in the natural and what I would say modern space in college football, we don't want to have that conversation. So then we just fold them in because we sweep everything under the rug, and then it ruins the competitive advantage that the top team gets and the calendar in the sport. That's probably not great. Well, we need to have a frank conversation about the Group of 5 and their inclusion into the college football playoff. If you want to keep them in the college football playoff, there should be a prerequisite ranking that they have to achieve in order to get in. That's pretty simple. Now, the more difficult conversation, but the better result, is to say, hey, let's go create a Group of 5 national championship, a playoff for them, sell that to the networks, grow revenue, grow valuable inventory, and then those players can be on stages where they can succeed, compete with their peers. I don't see how that is that crazy. It's not crazy, actually. I know that it's quite good. Okay, we are going to take a break this week for Christmas, and I want you to enjoy Christmas with everyone that you love. I'm certainly going to do that with my family. Very thankful for this time of year, so we're going to take this week off. We'll be back on December 29th with our preview episodes for the quarterfinals. That's right. So all these matchups that we've got some good ones. We're going to preview those on the 29th. So come back to the Joel Klatt Show on the 29th. Now, just a quick caveat. If any news breaks, like let's just say the winningest program in the history of college football were to hire a new head coach, a permanent head coach. I don't know. Maybe that could happen. Well, then we'll try to be back and we'll try to give you our thoughts on that if that were to occur. But if it doesn't, we'll be back on the 29th with our picks and previews episode for the quarterfinals of the college football playoff. Again, have a really Merry Christmas. Enjoy the time with the ones you love, and we'll be back on the 29th. Have a great week, everybody.